I do appreciate you coming today, and without any further ado, I'll just try to take questions for, what, about an hour? Is that right?
About
40 minutes? Okay. So,
according to your boss.
Who wants to lead off?
Secretary.
Start off with the football schedule that was released today. We thought last year's schedule was pretty brutal the first month, but this one is extra.
I'm really excited about it, and I'm really happy that we have a football coach and players that feel good about a schedule like that. As I've said in years past, it's always difficult to put together an independent schedule where you're really putting together 12 teams each year instead of 4 non-conference foes. And when you put them together, some of these teams came into the schedule maybe a year or two ago. Some of them came on quite a bit earlier than that. And it's always hard to really determine where teams will be when you schedule them. And so, like, we have Stanford scheduled out into, I'm not going to throw out a date, might not be exactly right, but 2027 in order to get, we have a home and home with them down the road somewhere. And I don't know how Stanford is going to be in 2027 or us, but it should be a good game based on history and tradition. And so that's just a game that no matter where the programs are right now, you'd feel good about it. Just addressing next year's schedule, I feel that it's, if you were to take each one of those teams at their very best, it would be wicked. But I don't know if each one of those teams is at their very best in their history right now, including BYU. So I think that we have a really good shot to win a large number of games next year based on who we're playing, where we're playing. But there's so many intangibles right now. We'll go through spring ball and fall camp, and they can tell me a little bit more. I could tell you a little bit more about how I feel about the games as they come next year. But I like the schedule, and our season ticket sales are up from last year at this point. Now, based on where we were at the end of last year's selling season, we've surpassed already. So I think it's a good sign.
When you put a schedule together, are you concerned if they were at their best? Are you concerned that, gosh, maybe I overdid it this year?
Well, if you were to look at just the names, I think that would be yes, that would be true. But I think if I could take a 12-week or 13-week of a calendar of football fall season and slot those games in on home and road when I wanted them with a bye, it wouldn't look like that. There's no way. But you can't get those teams. Like, we couldn't get Tennessee to play us in November. So I actually went to Kalani and said, do you want to play Tennessee? It's going to be early in the year. It would be part of a really difficult early stretch. I think Duff's told me that we're the only team in college football next year that plays 4 P5 schools in the first 4 weeks. That seems, I guess a lot of P5 schools would play non-conference games against Group of 5 or independents, but that's what a good schedule looks like for an independent team like BYU. So it's not perfect by any means, but I think it's the best we could do considering we don't get to slot them in wherever we want. We get them, a lot of these games, you slot them in where there's a time available. Like, I'm looking into 23, 24 right now, 25. I was just working with Dave Brown yesterday on the schedules, and you have like a slot. And so if you were to really wanted to do the exercise, you could do it and see what teams are available in 2023, 24, 25 on the week of October 11th. And the answer is 2 or 3. So you get what you get when it comes down to doing that. And most teams, you just don't have to do that because you're scheduling 4 games, and they're usually early in the season. Every once in a while, you may get a game later because of the inter-conference rivalries that set up buys and things like that. It opens up slots. But most teams, most conferences don't want to disrupt the regular season the conference season once it starts.
Kind of going along with that, it was announced that we have our series with Utah being extended for the coming years. How big is that for kind of the athletics program as a whole to ensure that you have that rivalry for the years to come?
I'm really happy with it. I'm grateful to Utah that they extended that for 2 years to where it went to. You all know how I feel about it, and I've said before that it's a different perspective from Utah being in a conference in the Pac-12 as us independent. We like to get the biggest games that we can. The Pac-12 teams don't necessarily try to get the biggest games that they can. But for Utah, it's unique, and they understand the rivalry. Many of their fans don't like it. Many of their fans like it. That's between Mark and Kyle as to determine how they're going to do that, and I'm grateful for those 2 games.
There seems to be a little bit of a frustration on the part of some coaches in football and basketball with the rigorous academic standards. Is there anything that can be done to ease that frustration on behalf of the coaches?
I don't know if you can do it on behalf of the coaches. I think the coaches may say things publicly or privately in public, if that makes sense. But our coaches understand what BYU is all about. When coaches come to BYU and they take the job, they realize that there are academic standards. I would say, based on my knowledge of other schools and other ADs that I talk to, my peers, that it's not too dissimilar. There are some schools where the academics will drop their standards for athletes. You have to understand that at BYU, the admission standard is extremely high. It's already been lowered to admit a number of student athletes in most of our programs. So it's not like we're living up to the academic standard of our school. It's an extraordinary school with great standards. I'm grateful that they give us the opportunity to bring in kids that are below a certain level. So we go to great lengths, I do as an administrator, to work with our admissions and our central administration to try to put together teams and recruiting classes that would fit BYU. And if you were to sit all the coaches on my staff in this room, they would agree when they're looking at me that we do that we work on trying to get the fit. I have to state, and maybe Patrick, this is what you might be bringing up, that last year there was an individual that didn't get accepted into school based on our admissions policy. It was stated before that, before it came to that there would be requirements that had to be met that weren't. It hadn't happened prior to last year, but it did, and it didn't happen this year. So we were able, in this class, to be able to get the student athletes that we recruited. Now, our coaches will recruit student athletes probably to a higher standard. It would be extraordinarily hard for me to turn away a 5-star recruit that was a lower academic standard, but I would get on the table and stand on my head to get a 5-star athlete in. But I wouldn't do that to get to lower a standard at BYU if it wasn't a great fit for a 2-star. And our coaches understand that. They fully understand that.
So when you say that there's a standard for the university and a standard for the athletics, is that across the board athletes, or is it a certain number that can get in below the standard of the university?
It's a good question. It's a fair question, and the answer is yes, that we have kind of a little bit of both. Certain of our sports have more athletes that are recruitable and signable, so we have a little bit more room in those sports, and typically those sports are the ones that may reach a little bit more. I'm content with that. If there is an individual, I've fought for them, and I will continue to fight for them. So I don't think that we can say, like some people have addressed it that way. I don't think it's a fair assessment of how closely we work with our admissions program. And what I would say is, I've had the opportunity to be at Stanford and Cal, and they're 2 really great institutions, but it was very similar to that, and I could name dozens of others that would be almost exactly like ours.
Does team GPAs reflect in how much leeway that teams may have?
I don't know if it's necessarily GPA. I think even the NCAA gets away from GPA as far as the APR. But I think it's more with graduation rates and how the kids that you bring in, are they graduating? Are they having success? Are they staying eligible through the course of their matriculation? And I think that's a fair assessment. And I think our coaches, our academic staff, and admissions has really collaborated to get to a point where we all understand. But Patrick, I've done this. I've played, I've coached, I've been an administrator. If there's a kid out there that you really, really want, and he or she would be an exception, I'm going to fight for him.
Kalani is signed through 2020. Is there any update on a possible extension?
I think people are creating something that they're asking questions where we just typically, historically, I've been here 14 years, if you go back and look at the way we've done it, is we have a kind of a plan, a process that we go through, and this isn't his last year, and we've rarely gone into the last year of a contract, and it's not his last year. So he has more than 1 year left on his contract. I've spoken with Kalani before it even came up, just to make sure. We talk all the time. I don't know, I can't say we talk every day, but it's my attempt to talk every day. We talk about all kinds of things. So I know exactly where he stands. He knows exactly where I stand. And we don't talk about it. It externally might have forced the issue where I've gone to him and looked him in the eye and said, "How you doing, brother?" And he goes, "I'm doing fine." And I'm saying, "Look, great, let's play ball." So I think it's a situation that is created outside, and I understand the reasons, but it's not an issue.
How happy were you with the progress from 2017?
Very. We made progress. It was very good. We had a difficult season the year before, and we made progress. And maybe that's going to be a question that'll come up later, but I'll address it if it does. But certainly, there's many areas to be excited about. There's certain areas that we still need to continue to show growth and development, and we're working on those right now.
When you're looking at contract renewals and things like that, when you're evaluating the coaches, how much emphasis do you put into on-field or on-court performance compared to the academic sides, the personal sides, the development of kids as individuals?
I think that's the biggest part. I mean, they're student athletes, and we have processes and things in place that take care of and advance the student athletes in areas off the court, off the field, out of the pool. But look, I'm a coach. I'm a player. I like kids and teams that are chasing championships. I want them to be as good as they can in their sport, and so do they. Our kids want that. And so that's a huge factor. That's a big part of the evaluation. And I have my finger on the pulse of each one of our teams and each one of our coaches. And week to week and game to game, I'm aware of the things that you guys are writing about. I'm aware of the things that our fans are talking about. A lot of times, I'm made aware of that by our coaches, where I wouldn't really even know some of the details because the inner circle of a team, which I'm well aware of, does not include the athletic director sometimes. But my job and my responsibility is to have my pulse on that. So it seems silly to think when people say that I don't care. It's funny. It's silly because I care. And I care for our student athletes. I care for what their goals and their dreams and what they want to achieve. I care for our coaches, but I most importantly care for our programs because there's going to be a day when I'm not in charge of our programs. So when I am in charge of our programs, I need to do everything I can to lead and to direct, but I'm not the coach. I'm not the player. I have a role, and it's a significant role. And I feel that I have a good finger on the pulse of these teams. Now, some people feel like they know exactly why their opinion's formulated. And I know exactly why my opinion's formulated on teams and players and coaches and strategy and all that. And I take all of that into consideration. And those are the things that go into my decisions on how I speak with the coaches, how I talk with the players, how I encourage, how I direct, how I lead, how I counsel, all those things. And those things are occurring all the time. So it's not like I have 1 or 2 or 3 entry spots during the course of the year where I might evaluate. I'm always evaluating, and I don't think that that's rare. I think most ADs, I would hope most ADs, are in a constant position of evaluation. I think an example would be our women's volleyball team. They were 31-2, and I spoke a lot with Heather about her team and her evaluations, and there were issues, believe it or not, with a team like that. They had a number of issues that came up through the course of the year. I am not involved in the middle of that. I'm not involved in the intricacies of that, but I stand a short distance away, observe, and try to counsel and help all the time. Doesn't matter if it's football, baseball, women's gymnastic, soccer. Football and basketball is bread and butter. That's what we do. That's our revenue stream sports. I get it. I understand totally what the importance of those programs. Well aware of it, and I know what the issues are. I know what the discussions are, and I think it's important for me to look at the radar, but not have rabbit ears. I can't have rabbit ears. You can't have rabbit ears as an AD, or you'd lose your mind.
Who makes the decision in regards to an extension? Is that you or?
It's me. No, I have counselors, and I confide in some dear, close confidants that may not be here, because sometimes when you're in the midst of the battle, you might not see things. So I have a close number of really close confidants that I counsel with.
You mentioned Dave Brown earlier. Is he still working at ESPN, and is he kind of going to be the point man for possibly?
Dave does not. He no longer works at ESPN, hasn't for a couple of years, but he owns a company, started a company called Gridiron, which is the #1 football scheduling resource guru in the country. He talks to every coach, every AD, all the time, and there's no one that can compare.
What's the timeline for a ESPN contract extension framework for that?
We've been discussing that. We're in an option year right now, and we are in discussions right now.
Going back to the schedule, instead of bringing in McNeese State or Toledo or going across country to play UMass, seems like it'd be less expensive to try to get Weber on an annual basis, local, less expensive, and a quality opponent. Why not Weber on a more of an annual basis?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, Jerry Bovee and I are really good friends. Maybe one of my closest friends in the business, and we've played him once, but I don't have anything against playing him. We try to play the local. We've played Idaho State. Idaho State has actually made it very easy for us to play them, which I appreciate. They've saved us a couple times and moved a couple games, and in response, we've given them extra games. They have been a great benefit to us, and that's just good business. I appreciate the fact that they've bailed us out a couple times, and I'll scratch their back a little bit for that. We have played Southern Utah. We played Weber. We would play teams locally and regionally, especially in the state, if we can, when we can, if it makes good sense. That's not all the time that Weber can play us.
What about Dixie State? Are you in contact with them?
Yeah, I mean, I have been in contact with them because they're going to Division I, and that's another example of a Utah school now at Division I that would be looking for games.
Do you think that will take place?
It would be nice. I mean, I'll take a look at it and make it happen.
How's the appeal process going with the NCAA sanctions with the basketball?
We're just waiting our time and the appeal process. I'm glad that we have it. Looking forward to it. It's a kind of a long process where not a lot is occurring at this time, but we're waiting for the time where we'll have our voice, and I feel really good about where it is and what will happen at that time.
How how unfair did you think the vacation of the wins was?
That was the main thing, that the vacation of wins didn't feel like it was an accurate adjudication based on the details of the case, and that's the appeal. I think everybody understands that, and it's a really good process, and I feel good that we'll have that opportunity.
Did you get a lot of response from when they came down? And there's a lot of stuff going on. I don't know what type of interaction you had on that subject.
Yeah, I'd rather not get into the details of everything about it and who liked it and who didn't. But I think as we prepared our appeal, it was important to know what other people felt about the appeal and the peers that are in it. And there are other schools that have been in similar situations and there's similar cases, and we counseled and researched and did the best we could to see that. So we got some feedback, yeah, sure.
What's the timeline?
It'll come sometime in 2019.
Okay, that's fair.
I hope. It's scheduled, but it's not that so much the process, but the scheduling and the way it works and putting together the appeals panel and all that it's not easy. It's membership driven, and so you have to get the people together in a room. They have a number of cases. They spread them out over time because they're not full-time appeal committee member. Well, they are, but they don't do it full time. So we have to respect the process that they've set up, and it feels good right now.
You went ahead and extended Dave Rose. How come the process?
I felt at the time it was the right thing to do. Like I said in my earlier explanation, there are factors that come into play based on a number of issues, and taking all those things into consideration, some may be more important than others at the time. That was important for me. I think, right now, they're a team that struggled on the road early, and they're playing good ball right now, and we have a chance to see them play tomorrow night against Gonzaga, who's, I think, are they 4 now? 4, and that'll be a measure to see, playing a great team like that, how we do. And I like the resiliency in the last number of games against them. We play great at home, and I'm hoping that things continue.
The football program currently has an opening on the staff offensive line coach. How involved are you with positional coaches?
I'm a counselor. This is Kalani's hire, and he'll work with his particularly offensive coordinator, Jeff Grimes, but the staff. But Kalani and I have spoken a number of times. There's ideas that they have, and I'm not trying to poke holes in ideas, but he'll throw some things by me, and I appreciate the fact that he seeks my counsel, and I will not make this decision. I try not to influence and give him a nudge or a wink, but I think that it's really important that they make the decision and not me. They're the ones that are going to be in there every single day and have to have that unity and camaraderie and trust and faith, and I'm just excited to see how it goes. It's a very important hire, critical spot, and I like the people that are making the decisions.
Tom, what was it like seeing the growth of Zach Wilson over those few months, culminating with the bowl win?
It was very good. I think that a lot of people that had seen him in high school maybe, and then seen him early, maybe through camp, saw that potential. And initially, we couldn't see it all for a number of reasons. It's another thing where a lot of people had opinions on why it didn't happen when it did. But I was glad to see that it did catch on. He did catch on and had a lot to offer and added a lot to our team. And I think the future is really bright for him, how he plugs into our team in this fall camp and this next season. It's still a young team, but it's a good young team, and he's kind of one of the young leaders that will be one of the key stakeholders on that team, determining how well they do.
Speaking of coaches, what's the relationship with BYU now with Ty Detmer? Is he still a beloved Cougar, or is he one of those coaches that didn't work out and gone?
From whose perspective? I mean, from my perspective, I love Ty Detmer. I was here as a coach when his junior and senior year, so I saw him at his best. Saw him when he won the Heisman Trophy. I saw him when he just did incredible things in individual games. I can still picture it. He won a Heisman Trophy. It's an incredible honor and beloved by Cougar fans. It didn't work out. We've hashed this out. He's always welcome back. This is the 150th. This upcoming season is the 150th year of college football. We have plans to bring back a number of our great players, and he'll be the first one on the list to be invited back. And I certainly hope that he's able to come back. He's a terrific individual, not just a football player, but he's a great man, has a great family. They're super tied to BYU. He always will be. It's just a matter of, have we done everything we can to extend that hand and welcome him back.
You're contracted to the Hawaii Bowl in 2019, but I think new bowl agreements start in 2020. What's your expectation for where BYU fits in the new round of bowl tie-ins?
Well, the new bowl tie-ins are not necessarily nationwide. Those go at all different kinds, depending on the conferences. We have our bowl tie-ins were approximate to our ESPN contract. That's why 19 is our last bowl game. But after that, as we work on renegotiating, extending, or creating a new contract with ESPN, those are when the bowl slots will be determined. And it'll be interesting because the bowl world has changed from when we got in 9 years ago. And I'm grateful for the ESPN. As you all know, this year was really nice to rely on a partnership to get into the famous Idaho Potato Bowl game, where we didn't have a bowl game. And the maneuverings or relationships put us in that game. It'll be interesting to see, since so many teams from conferences or slots are allotted to games already, how we do this. But ESPN owns the games, and we're working right now on the strategies, their strategies, not necessarily ours, but their strategies that we will connect with to put us in bowl games.
Would you prefer kind of a long-term agreement with one game or continue to have year by year?
That's a good question. It would it would be dependent upon what that game might be. We've had a number of potential bowls contact us and say they wanted to create a bowl where we would be the anchor team. Interesting thought. But with being with ESPN, that would be something that they would determine. So we talk about those and pass along the interest and communicate that to ESPN.
You've played a number, and going forward, you'll continue to play a number of Mountain West/Pac-12 games in football teams. Is there any way that there had been discussion, or could possibly be discussion for some form of a scheduling agreement like what Notre Dame has with the ACC?
It's possible. We've broached that a little bit. There hasn't really been an interest for other conferences to do that. What it does is it tells everybody in those conferences you're playing BYU, which those 80s and football coaches have to have enough votes in that conference to be able to say, okay. I think Notre Dame, I think the Pac-12 would do a scheduling agreement with Notre Dame. Notre Dame's Notre Dame. So I don't know how many, there's a handful of teams that you could name that they would do it, but they're all locked in. If you look at the independents, that's what you're looking at. It's flattering to think that people might consider us for that, but I just don't know if it's realistic because all those conferences are focusing on their endeavors and their enterprise, and it really doesn't include BYU. And some of them thought about it, but they can't get enough teams that would want to play. The thing that's interesting about the Notre Dame is they have a bowl agreement that is set up with the ACC. That would be really easy. That would be a nice thing to do. But the ACC is willing to take Notre Dame into their conference as a bowl scheduling agreement and offer up one of their bowls, even a really good one. But not too many teams want to give us one of their bowls. And I understand it. I totally understand it. And, if somebody came to us with a really good proposal, we would look at it. Be something, since the bowls are involved, it would involve ESPN.
this may be far-fetched, but on those same lines, with ESPN owning the Bulls and owning the money, is there any chance there could be a bowl game in Utah at Rio Tinto, or with Dixie State going to Division I? Maybe they have 10,000 seats. They could increase it, and then have your bowl with a certain number of a Pac-12 or WAC or something like that. Is that far-fetched?
No, I mean,
Has that even been discussed?
I mean, like I said, there have been a number of individuals that have contacted us about that very thing, not necessarily in the state of Utah, but in other places. And we kind of push that to ESPN at this point in time and say, hey, look, you want to take a look at this? And, you know, they're the bowl. There's bowls that are traditional games that are owned and operated by municipalities or, you know, I don't know, organizations. And then there's ESPN, which owns a number of the bowls. That's the way it is right now for bowl games. And it's morphed in the last, 9 years since we've been in this bowl agreement. BYU, I shouldn't say BYU. BYU as part of the WAC started the Fiesta Bowl. BYU as part of the WAC started the Holiday Bowl. BYU as part of the Mountain West Conference started the Las Vegas Bowl. So could BYU as an independent start a bowl? It's feasible. Could happen. But I'm not hiding. I'm not trying to be cryptic. It's possible.
But could you see a bowl game in Utah?
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'd rather be in Miami Beach or L.A. or something like that.
Yeah, okay, all right. I got you.
Maybe.
At the media day, you said that the Notre Dame game could end up being better than a paycheck. What's the latest with Notre Dame?
No, nothing to report on Notre Dame. At this point in time.
Notre Dame's AD Jack Swarbrick expressed interest to get a 13th game, kind of a 13th data point. Could BYU factor into that kind of a independent, championship game, if you will?
No, they wouldn't do that. I've heard that suggestion. It's another goes back to this kind of Notre Dame is Notre Dame. They stand alone, as much as maybe they might not be, the top of the hill right now. That brand is in college football history is number one. Maybe not right now, but the residual will last for a long time. And I respect that, and that's why I can't force an issue with that. They have a lot of strength, but we do have contracts, and we'll do everything we can to come up with a good resolution.
Could you speak to Gonzaga and maybe yourselves as far as how the new scheduling agreement is going with basketball conference? Have they backed off football conference?
Yeah. What's your particular question?
Well, I'm wondering, Gonzaga seem to be the driver behind it, and I was just wondering if if they're comfortable with the way things are. We know that the game on with Santa Clara and the game was over about 2 minutes
right.
into it because they sent a message both times. I'm just wondering how pleased they are with what they asked for and what they got. If you're able to speak to them.
I will. I'll do the best I can. I haven't really spoken to them after, but there was a lot of conversation leading up to. And we were one of the people that, BYU, that we would be in the same side of the discussion.
Right.
And obviously there had to be a number of schools in our conference that would agree to those terms in order to get a vote of majority to turn that. It basically comes down to being on the basketball. I'm not on it anymore, but the last 4 years, to see teams that were not in P5 conference, P6 conferences for basketball, that would win games and drop in the RPI, which is now the net. Yeah. And it was killing our conference. And where you're slotted in your seed has everything to do with how you advance. Mm-hmm. And so that's not hard to figure out, but there were a lot of possibilities and suggestions and opinions. What we settled on was not having our number one team play the two the two lowest RPI teams. I'm going to say RPI. Y'all know net? Okay. Net teams. And so this year, they don't have to play those, so they're not going to drop spots. And one of the things that was so great when Gonzaga went to the Final Four is they had that extraordinarily high seed. But if you end up with a 3 seed instead of a 1, you're in trouble. That was, if you look at our women's volleyball team, we were either going to be a 4, which is a number 1 seed, or a 5, which is a number 2 seed. That made all the difference in the world because we got Texas here. Now the NCAA tournament is neutral, but it's the same strength and power in who you're playing. So I would say, PK, that they would be happy with that. The rest, they have to control their own destiny by how they play, but that in our conference has helped. The most important thing, I think, is that you see the middle of our conference getting stronger, and that in and of itself is going to help Gonzaga because they are now playing a number of games this year that are in the top 100 net instead of 180 or 200, and those numbers add up.
Tom, tomorrow night you play 9 p.m. tip-off against Gonzaga. You played last week. St. Mary's 9 p.m. tip-off. Attendance is down a little bit throughout college basketball, but even here. Can you do anything to get those things played earlier?
No. We could. I mean, you could not play on ESPN. Here's the thing. We played St. Mary's on ESPN 2 at 9 o'clock at night. I had to take a nap at 6 just to make sure I could stay up. But after the game, late at night, my friends on the basketball committee from last year and friends and peers around the country texted me, nice win, good job. If that game wasn't on ESPN or ESPN2, they wouldn't have seen it. So we're in this dilemma now, and it's not just BYU, it's every conference, that you're trying to get the conference or the broadcast entities are paying those teams a lot of money for their services. You're going to play when they tell you. However, for BYU, we have a contract with ESPN. We want to play now on ESPN. It's a double-edged sword because it does affect our fans. I totally understand that. But it's like you can have one or the other. And right now, our coaches, our administration, our feeling from around the country, all points add to the fact that it's better for our teams, for the exposure, than it is, it's hard for me to say that, for the fans' live experience. And that's not the only thing that hurts the live experience, is time. But there's other factors, too, in that we put every game on TV, thanks to BYU TV. I like that. BYU, this goes to the argument of BYU Cougar Nation around the nation and the world can see every single game. But not because they can see them all on their big screen or their computer on their sofa, they don't all come to the games. Same thing is true for Alabama football. There's people in big-time programs, football, basketball, they're going to have a little bit of diminishing returns when it comes to attendance. And we have to, I don't want to say we want to live with it, but we have to understand it, own it. And I'll give you an example. One of the things we've done with football is we spent millions of dollars putting in a DAS system, which is the cellular system, and the Wi-Fi system, so that people will come to the stadium and have their phones and have their connectivity. And one of the big areas is our students. That was diminishing. You can say it's because of our play, our record, the teams, the time. Yes, 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 all those factors. But one of the factors was I couldn't get connected. Now they can. So we're going to do everything we can to erase or sharpen the event as the game as an event. And it's not a BYU thing. Everybody has to try to do that. Hospitality, amenities, facilities, all of those are factors, and many, many more.
Along those same lines with amenities and facilities, one of the trends that seems out west is kind of downsizing football stadiums to bring in more premium seating. You did that with the Marriott Center, downsizing capacity. Any talks of ever doing something like that, big picture, with the football stadium?
There's discussions that are current about hospitality, but not downsizing. I mean, I think that we could do some things with hospitality at the stadium that would be in addition to. But I think that our stadium's about the right size. Right now we're not filling it, but we did for years, and my intention is to get a team that will attract, and in spite of all the things we've talked about, the exceptions or reasons why people won't come, that we would fill it up. And I think that our number's just about right.
And how critical is it tickets sold for football games, men's basketball, to your revenue streams for?
Very important.
Can't have one of these without asking about the possibility of joining a football conference. Any change in philosophy, desire?
42 minutes in.
Opportunity, any change?
I really, as you have told, you guys are the media, you know publicly, every once in a blue moon, someone gets a wild hair and just wants to bring it up and say something about it. It doesn't surprise me. I kind of like it. I like the fact that it gets brought up every once in a while. But it really, really, really comes down to a few of the big-time movers and shakers and what they want to do. So it's not so much about what I get. I actually get mailers from people across the country with, here's the solution that is going to solve everybody's problem. I think it's cool that people are thinking about that. Unrealistic, not even close to possible, but they spend a lot of time on it. But it really comes down to, some of the schools at the top of the conferences determining what they're going to do, where they want to be, and what they see their future like. It's not different than society. It's a market. It's a market-driven organization.
How big is, we've touched on this before, but how big is success in that equation? Because, BYU obviously has a national fan base. They show up even when the team's struggling. and yet we haven't had for a very long time a team that's gone through October with a lot of national buzz.
I think it's really important. Like I said, we've gone through a period of time where things changed around us. We changed. I changed. We're independent. All those were decisions that were made to adapt to the change that was going on around us. I get a kick out of people that think that it's 1984. It's not. Things have changed so dramatically, and we're living in 2019 with a vision to 2023 and 24, which if you think you can predict, I'd like to have your written predictions at the end of the day about what it's going to look like in 2024, 23, when teams or conferences make decisions on broadcast rights agreements. That's what it's all about. We don't know. So you can only predict, adapt, change, try to find the fissures that bring you up and forward. And you make decisions that sometimes take you back and before you go forward. And obviously, I'm not making decisions purposefully to go back, but some of them have taken us in different direction than we would have thought. There's factors. It would have been really interesting to see how BYU football would have done with a healthy Taysom Hill for 4 years. But it didn't happen.
I don't know if you can briefly put this or put it into one point, but overall, BYU athletic department as a whole, what is your biggest problem, obstacle right now, and what is your biggest success right now and that you're most proud of right now?
Well, I don't know if I'd say problems or successes. I maybe focus would be what I'm looking at, and I think our focus is football and basketball. That's our focus. Those are the two sports. And I'm not going to say anything that's going to infuriate our coaches or our players from our other sports. They fully understand. When football and basketball arise, the tide comes in, all ships rise. They all know that. And they're super supportive of it. But we're in a spot where we want to be better in those sports. We need that success. We understand the challenges. When I talk to these coaches and the players, they understand the challenge. They might not look at it from the exact perspective that I do or you might, but they understand the challenge. And that's our focus of attention right now. I think the things that are going well is I think our Olympic sports are doing extraordinary. And I'm happy for them. We have some fans that discount their success because football and basketball is not doing well. I don't see that as an either-or proposition. I think you can have great success in those Olympic sports and still put in a ton of time and energy, emotion, and passion into the football and basketball. And that's what we're trying to do.
You've had an accomplished career in your role as athletic director. What's kind of your goal or what kind of motivates you going forward?
I got to be careful. I got in trouble with one of these answers a few months back. But I think really focusing on the individuals that make the programs run, and those are the players, student athletes. So it's recruiting, performance, development. Those are all factors that we look at every single day. The coaches are where the rubber meets the road. I'm not with those players every day. Coaches are. And I think that, that's probably my thing that I like the most is trying to, extend the opportunity to advance them in those areas.
You mentioned recruiting. One of the things that's kind of came on the scene lately is the transfer portal, and one of the part of that is the grad transfers. How do grad transfers factor into coming to BYU, and what is it a tricky proposition to get them in?
Yeah, it is. I think the grad transfer program in the NCAA is under scrutiny, if I would say, though. I think it was a good idea that when they started it, kind of came from the external people saying, hey, if kids at your school graduate, can they not go to graduate school wherever they want? And that's a good idea. I don't think a lot of people understood the unintended consequences of what it means to transfer to a school for graduate school. I'm not sure how many of you went to graduate school. Just kidding. I know that most of you did. But it's not undergraduate. It's not undergraduate school. If you think it's hard to get into BYU undergraduate, try graduate school. It's super, super tough. And that's a hard thing nationally is, yeah, you can come. So kids graduate and then go, I want to go there. And it's like, we don't do graduate schools. I'm not plugged into the graduate schools. I'm plugged into undergraduate admissions, and that's about all I can handle. But I'm not involved in that. And so across the country, athletic directors are pulling their hair out. It's not that we don't want people to have the opportunity to go. If someone wants to go and graduate and leave, and they've graduated, they should have that opportunity. I have no problem about that. But trying to get kids to come here is super hard.
And that's been kind of the messaging from Kalani. It seems like where he's selling to kids, it's going to be 4 years of hard on and off the field. Do you like that messaging as they try to get recruits into this program?
Yeah. I mean, it's real. I think the thing that I like about Kalani is he understands in a short period of time what it is to be at BYU and the strengths. So I think one of the things that I don't feel that people understand is teams, and it's different from football and basketball and some of the Olympic sports, but we've had success in the other sports, and we're still competing against the country. But the football and the basketball is a little different in every aspect. So you got to look at them differently. But I appreciate the way that Kalani has figured it out, that this fit is super important. And the correct fit with the student athletes and coaches leads more quickly and more sustainability towards success on the field.
Tom, you mentioned 14 years you've been in this position. How much has your job changed that time? And how much longer do you see yourself doing this job?
It's changed a lot. Certainly my day-to-day responsibilities have changed. I think purposefully I've changed a lot from what I do. I spend a lot more time with players, individual players and coaches, because at first, the first number of years, I felt I had to kind of get up and running with the programs and the coaches and putting together the vision and the goals and get it running. And I've said this before, it's my bliss is the student athletes and the coaches. And I love that part of it. I am constantly on our coaches about change and updating their skills and in continuing to learn, and I have to force myself to do that. There's a time where I'm getting older where it'll be best for me to pass the baton, and I want to do that. I don't want to drop the baton and have someone scramble and pick it up. I want to pass that baton smoothly, and so I think about that sometimes, but it doesn't consume me, believe me.
We've probably have time for one more question, maybe two.
Back to transfers. Riley Bird, is he gone? Is he transferred? Has he left school? What can you tell us or update him about him?
I don't think so. I think his purpose is to come here and graduate, so he hasn't left school. Great kid, fun to be around, exciting to watch. He's made decisions for his future that I'm supportive of. So I wish him luck, and wherever he goes, someone's going to get a player. I think he'll find a place that will be more in tune for the things that he wants, and I think it'll be great.
What's the pitch that you give to donors about continuing to pump in money to BYU athletics moving forward?
What's the pitch? I mean, I think it's not really a pitch. I just kind of speak from my heart that when I came here in 1978, it was amazing to me how people were connected to the school. Where when we went and played on the road, there were so many people that came to our games, but not very many people came to see their team play when they played at BYU. And I figured that out early. Came back as a coach, and it was more and more intense. And then I come back as an AD, and 14 years later, the intensity of the devotion and of the committed fans is amazing. It's not hard to connect to BYU amidst what some people say. Some people get frustrated, and I actually like it when people send me letters saying, I'm not coming to any more games for a year. And I like that. I like it when they get hot and they're passionate. I'd rather do that than be apathy. And that's, what you kind of guard against is that. But our donors have been tremendous. We're not in P5 money, but we're competing with P5 schools very well. And it's not all about the money, that's what I'm saying. But our supporters see that. What they believe in and the reason they give is because of the kids. They love our kids. They love what they stand for. They love how they represent. They love how they compete. And it's why I'm here. It's why they give. It's why people keep coming. And if there's a lull or a drag in what's going on in sports, it's what keeps them coming back. And there will be ups and downs. I mean, I've watching games on TV that are not even BYU, and I'll go turn it off because I'm so disgusted. That's not even my teams. I love it that people are passionate about what we do. If we don't have passion, we're in deep trouble. And I really love the fact that our fans are passionate.
All right.
You got a Super Bowl.
Who's playing?